Hi, I'm Michael Causey, Editor-in-Chief here at ACRP. Today we're doing another spotlight on improving information exchange in clinical trials. And our special guest is Jim Reilly, who's the VP of R&D Strategy for Veeva Systems and a longtime friend to ACRP. Jim's also speaking at our virtual conference in May on operational efficiencies. Maybe a little overlap with that today, but obviously he'll go a lot more in-depth in May. But Jim, let's just start right in. We are living, as they say, in interesting times. Why is improving information sharing in clinical trials so important today and throughout 2021?
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and it's nice to be with you. Well, I mean, very simply, now is the time. It's more crucial than ever for us to speed the way that research is conducted. And I think it's because we're seeing the future unfold right before our eyes, right? The pandemic is forcing us to go from dipping our toes into wading waist deep into the decentralized trial world and the technology surrounding those. Also, we've had these movements afoot, the movements of site centricity and patient centricity. So I think all of these culminate into this environment of recognizing that now is the time for us to do things to speed research. It's the time to strike. But there's still some areas where we're held back. I think there's a lot of what I'll call paper on glass happening. And what I mean by that is I think we're doing things still in research, still the old way, but we're just putting some shiny technology around them. When you really dig in, there's still some rampant use of paper, particularly at the site. And there's still a lot of manual information sharing, throwing information over the wall amongst sponsor, patient, CRO, and site. And so I think there are these big challenges still that we need to overcome as an industry. And interestingly, and as you're aware, Michael, at Veeva, we do this unified clinical survey every year. And it bears out from last year's survey some of what I'm sharing. Notably the reliance on paper, first and foremost. Sponsors and CROs continue to report that they use things like email with paper attachments, paper shipments to and from the site. And it's this kind of, unfortunately, paper-driven world that still is winning the day. Then also the notion of exchanging information. It's still very manual. It's still very, very request from you, you provide back to me oriented. And when you dig in with the sponsors and the sites and the CROs, they tell you that, look, we want to improve that. We want to make the way in which we share information more efficient, because if we do that, it's going to make the process easier and less manual. It's going to increase visibility and speed, and it's going to improve the overall execution and quality of the trial. So again, we've got this movement afoot, right? We've got this thirst for change, but we've got these challenges that we need to overcome. And I think we can do it as an industry.
And the times really demand it. But to your point, I do see a lot of 3-ring binders out there still. So there's a ways to go. Let's talk. You're on the front lines out there a lot, working with folks. Can you talk about some of the things you're seeing in terms of best practices or what organizations are doing to a better job of sharing information across the whole spectrum of study partners and patients?
Yeah. So thanks for that. And as I alluded to, again, you are seeing some of this notion of site and patient centricity. And where I see that bearing out is that you are seeing sponsors be a lot more sort of open and warm to the idea of thinking about the needs of the site first and how they can exchange information with the site more easily and reduce some of the burden. And of course, when it comes to patient centricity, sites and sponsors are much more oriented to the mindset of the patient when it comes to how can I help patients find the trial. You see sponsors who are creating sites, websites that provide listings of all their trials, and they make these available for patients to find trials more effectively. You see, again, more pandemic oriented, but now you're starting to really see adoption of some of these decentralized technologies. I was citing a statistic as early as last year that 90% of consenting is still done on paper. We don't have new data yet, but I can guarantee you that we are going to see a significant drop where consenting is starting to become much more electronic in nature, just by the very nature of what's happening with the pandemic. But the question becomes, can this be here to stay? And how do we use that as a forcing function to drive better efficiency and better ways of working? So I think it is a real opportunity for the industry to do that.
Okay, Jim, final question. How do you see the clinical trial landscape changing in 2021?
Sure. So I mentioned there's, I think, an opportunity for the industry. You've got tech providers, you've got sponsors, CROs, and sites, and they all want to do the right thing for research and for patients. And for me, it's about now putting a more comprehensive plan in place. To date, with all the pandemic-related activities, it's been pretty reactionary. So I think now we have the time to think more strategically, put a real plan in place, and have some consistency in terms of how we automate and simplify trials. And I think to do that, there needs to be a network effect at play here, like you see in other industries. You see this in telecom, you see it in banking. With banking, I think a lot of times we take for granted how simple it is to do banking these days, right? We can go to an ATM that might not be affiliated with our bank, and magically money appears. Well, that's not magic. It's because there's a lot of work done behind the scenes to establish a network around banks and credit providers so that could happen. Likewise, in research, we think there's going to have to be a similar network effect where sites, sponsors, and patients have a simple means to have information brokered digitally. And if we do that, that will really be what can speed up research and ultimately improve the situation for patients, sites, and sponsors.
Fascinating times. I want to thank you for guiding us through this. 2021 is already looking to be a very transformational year in clinical trials. This has been our ACRP TV spotlight on improving information exchange in clinical trials. We've been speaking with Jim Reilly, who's the VP of R&D Strategy with Veeva Systems, and also a speaker at our upcoming conference in May on operational efficiencies. Jim, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Michael.